Shalom, shalom. This week we will be reading Parshat Devarim. It's also a unique week because Motzash/Sunday is Tisha B'Av, where we fast, the 9th of Av, where we suffered from the destruction of our temple. And there's a connection between this week's Parsha and Tisha B'Av that exists in this word Eicha. Eicha is a book, the Book of Lamentation is called Eicha, that we read on the night going into Tisha B'Av, that we discuss the atrocities and the difficulties that the nation went through after the destruction of the temple. And there's philosophical kind of thought questions provoking, and mainly this word Eicha, where we go to God and say, how can this be? How can this have occurred? If you read it, it's heart-wrenching to see the things that we had to endure and go through. And we turn to God and we say, how can it? Like as if it's God's fault. This has always really bothered me. Now, I know that there is a discrepancy where we talk about having this kind of chutzpah that the Jewish people have, and sometimes it serves us really well, and sometimes it doesn't serve us well at all. And how did you know the difference? And I think what always bothered me is when we turn to God and we say, how could this have happened? And the destruction and the death and the torture of our people. And I'm always thinking, like, what do you mean? How would we have the chutzpah to ask this question? Did they not have the Torah that I have? Did they not read the Pasukim that I read? Did they not understand that if you don't follow the Torah, then you push away God's presence? By keeping the Torah, we invite God's presence in, and then we have a protection, because when God's there, nothing bad can happen. And when we go against the Torah, we push, so to speak, the screen. We say, we don't want you here. And God allows us to do and to have what we want. And when we push God out, God stays. He doesn't stay where he's not invited. And then evil, horrible things are prone to happen, because if you just leave things as they are, people will be people and bad things are going to happen. So I'm like, why don't we understand that? How can we turn to God? And then I understand, because we've gone through suffering nowadays, and I see, unfortunately, it's not like we're impervious to this. We've had October 7th. We have deaths and destruction and tears constantly flowing from our people, dying all sorts of difficult and painful death. And I understand. And I want to say also to God, how much can we endure? Please stop this. But you know what I noticed? That I try, and I don't say to God, how as if God's responsible, because I understand that we're responsible. But what I think is the difference, and where we should be saying Eicha and where we shouldn't be saying Eicha, is if you look in the Torah again, all of the advice is in the Torah. And we look in Parshat Devarim, what does Moshe say when Moshe uses this word Eicha? He's recounting, he gives a little bit of a synopsis through everything that the Jews have endured from the time that he came on the stage and they left, and they were in the wilderness. And he says to them that when they were on Mount Horeb on Har Sinai, and in the Parshat Yitro, you will see that the people were constantly coming and going in front of Moshe because they had issues, because we are a contentious people and we have issues and we have problems, and he had to constantly solve these issues with people coming and going. And Yitro's like, this is going to kill you. You need to put into a system where then they made this hierarchical system of courts. But you see there, Moshe said, and I said, and he uses the word Eicha, he says, how can I handle this nation levadi by myself? They are contentious, they are argumentative, they are a difficult nation. And this is a problem with our people. And the word Eicha, what it's trying to teach us here, right, is that two things. First of all, that even if we have the best possible leader, right, Moshe Rabbeinu, the rabbi par excellence, who was anav mikol adam. He was the most modest. He was the person who spoke the word of God. You're not going to get a better person than that, who's a funnel for the word of God. And we had the best leader, and still we had so much infighting and so many problems. And if we have the best leader, and that's not going to affect the people to do better, not to have all these little quarrels, then what do we think is going to happen? What do we think? And God tells us, I think in this, it's a lesson that even if we have the best leader, if we're not willing to learn and do the work ourselves, bad things are going to happen. Bad things happen, and bad things did happen. We ended up with a lot of problems in the desert. And so, I mean, I think, look, we do need good leaders, and we don't have the best leaders now, and people are all the time lamenting that, and I lament that as well, when there's difficulties and problems and things that are not good going on. But look, we got to start with this grassroots. We got to be better ourselves. We got to be better ourselves, because we don't merit a good leader if we're argumentative, if we're being self-destructive. What do we expect that our leader is going to look like? It reflects back on who we are. We need to be good and merit a good leader, and we'll get a good leader, hopefully. But anyway, that's the first lesson. And I think the second lesson that we need to see is that let's learn Moshe's question and Moshe's chutzpah, what it was. Moshe's questions and chutzpah about how or why or arguing with God was always before the fact of to save the people, to do good for the people, in a place where it can have a positive effect, looking forward to the future. What can I do? And God, you can't destroy them, and you must give them water, and you must understand them. And Moshe coming to God in brazenness with asking for a positive future for the people. Not Eicha and looking back and saying, God, how could you have done X, Y, and Z? Because Moshe understood when X, Y, and Z happened, it was the only possible solution. God knows better than the rest of us, and that, if you look at the Torah, a lot of times we cause our own demise. The issue lies with us. And so when we ask this question, Eicha, when we turn to God and say, how can it be? It needs to be proactive. It needs to be, how can this happen? And that we're looking to understand, to better our future, so that we don't have to suffer any longer. And when Tisha B'Av comes, for us to sit on the floor and lament and just dump it all on God and theologically say, if there's a God, this destruction wouldn't have happened, is beyond erroneous and destructive and just asking for more of the same. But to sit on the floor and to lament and to ask Eicha, reflecting that question back at us, okay, this happened, what can I do so this never happens again? And then we look at this week's Parsha and we see that Moshe's Eicha, it says, I can't do this because the people are contentious. To know that if we're not contentious, if we do our best to live harmonious, to get along, and to do well, we can merit a leader on the level of Moshe, and we can have a good life going forward, going into the land, and I mean going into the land anew. I'm sitting here now blessed to be in this country, but I want to re-enter this land with a new philosophy, with a new frame of mind, with a new us, where we're getting along and working together, and we will reflect that on the leader reflect that onto us, and we will have a positive future. So my message is to myself and to everybody is, let's not just sit down and cry about the past. Let's reflect on how we can do differently to merit a bright future and never, ever, ever have to sit on the floor on Tisha B'Av again. Shabbat Shalom.